The imperial guards discovered him in the forgotten shadows of an abandoned villa's wine cellar, clutching a small vial of poison in his trembling hand. This was not an ordinary criminal or a rebel against the state, but Sporus, the once and future empress of Rome, 20 years old, preparing to take his own life rather than endure the fate the new emperor had orchestrated for him in the Colosseum. However, to fully grasp why death felt like mercy compared to what awaited him, we must rewind 3 years. To the moment a grieving, half-mad emperor first laid eyes on a teenage boy who bore a striking resemblance to his deceased wife. What follows is not merely another tale of Roman decadence. It stands as the most disturbing case of identity theft in human history. This was a theft not of name or fortune, but of an entire existence, where one life was surgically erased to resurrect another. What is even more chilling is that every element of this narrative is grounded in official Roman records. Rome, 65 AD, an unexpected murder. The most powerful man on earth had just crossed into the realm of murder, not through wars or executions, which were common in the empire, but through the brutal killing of his pregnant wife, Poppaea Sabina. Emperor Nero had taken her life with his own hands, with varying accounts reporting it as a single devastating kick to her swollen belly or a horrific beating that left her suffering on the cold marble floor. The realization of his action hit him like a thunderclap, and he screamed for physicians, but they were powerless to reverse death even for a god emperor. Poppaea Sabina was no ordinary imperial consort. She had captivated Nero's heart and mind, embodying a muse who could challenge the grandiosity of his self-image. Historical accounts painted her as a woman of almost ethereal beauty, possessing amber-colored hair that shimmered like spun gold, opalescent skin, and large, doe-like eyes compared to those of Venus by Roman poets. What many don't fully grasp about Nero's grief is how deeply unhinged it truly was. With the power of 60 million souls at his command and a messianic belief in his own divinity, the death of his beloved wasn't just a personal loss. It was a challenge to the very order of the universe. For Nero, it was nothing short of a personal affront. The descent into madness, his reaction to Poppaea's demise, shocked even the seasoned members of the Roman aristocracy. Refusing the customary cremation rituals, he instead had her body embalmed with more spices than the entire Arabian Peninsula could supply in a single year. He dressed her remains in elaborate robes and placed her in a crystal sarcophagus, an object of perpetual display. Palace servants witnessed the unsettling sight of the emperor conversing with a corpse, setting aside portions of food at banquets, and seeking her opinions on matters of the state. However, it wasn't simply grief that plagued Nero. It was an unraveling of his very being. Sleep became elusive without copious amounts of poppy wine, and the emperor awoke screaming, convinced he could hear the voice of his dead wife calling from nearby. The taste of food vanished unless it was prepared to her exact specifications, and he preserved her chambers meticulously, down to the positioning of her hairbrush. As the months passed following her death, Nero began seeing her likeness everywhere, the face of a young servant bringing wine, a senator's wife at the games. Even in the features of prostitutes on the streets of Rome, meetings would stop mid-sentence as he fixated on random women, gripping their faces in terror as he searched for something that only Poppaea possessed. This madness persisted and intensified. Nero commissioned countless portraits and sculptures to celebrate Poppaea's essence. Yet the artists invariably fell short. The emperor would rage when they failed to capture the spirit of his late wife and would sometimes weep like a child. The fateful encounter. Then came the moment that would alter Sporus's life forever, a mundane administrative review in late 65 AD as Nero painstakingly focused on clerical appointments to distract himself from sorrow. A young freedman was presented for approval. The boy before him, merely 15 and possessing the exact same extraordinary eyes as Poppaea, halted time in its tracks. Myriad emotions flickered across Nero's face, a frenzy of hope, manic joy, and something far more unsettling than rage. "What is your name?" he nearly whispered. "Sporus, Divine Augustus." "I am Sporus." Context is critical here, as Roman annals often overlook important details. Sporus was not just any slave boy. He had been born in the imperial household, raised amidst the labyrinthine corridors of power, endowed with education alongside children of freedmen. His delicate features set him apart, marking him for a role in administration rather than manual labor. But in that moment, none of this mattered. Sporus ceased to be a person. He was to become a canvas for Nero's delusions. Nero extensively examined the boy for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only mere minutes. He touched Sporus's face, adjusted his hair, and observed him from all angles, his expression transforming from desperation to delight. Finally, he stepped back, and the smile that broke across his face resembled that of a man who believed he had conquered death. "Cancel the rest of today's appointments," he commanded. "Summon my personal physicians. Prepare their finest chambers and the sharpest instruments. We have work to do." Transformation begins. The transformation of Sporus was not immediate. It began with thorough examinations and measurements, as Nero studied every aspect of Sporus that might mold him into his lost love. For days, Sporus found himself confined within opulent chambers adjacent to those of the emperor. Artists who had once painted Poppaea were summoned to sketch Sporus, creating detailed comparisons of features. Nero analyzed these notes obsessively, not just for physical likeness, but also for nuances in voice, gestures, and mannerisms. The psychological torment began in earnest. Sporus was forced to abandon his given name. He was now to be addressed as lady or mistress. His simple tunics were traded for flowing dresses in Poppaea's favorite hues. He was meticulously taught to apply cosmetics intended for noblewomen, and with each sunrise he gazed into the polished bronze mirror, watching his identity be systematically erased. As Sporus drifted through his days like a ghost trapped in a waking nightmare, he felt an oppressive weight descend upon him. One word of protest could culminate in death or worse. The grim reality of his fate loomed large. Nero's plans had not been concealed. He had spoken of them in excited tones that betrayed a fervor akin to that of an artist delineating a grand masterpiece. Sporus learned that he would undergo a thorough transformation, surgical modifications to recreate a woman's form. These procedures transcended mere castration. They were an unprecedented attempt to reshape a man into something entirely new. The physicians were made aware that failure would incur death, while success promised untold rewards. The night before the surgery, Nero visited Sporus, presenting him with a small wooden box of treasure he had hidden away. Inside gleamed Poppaea's wedding ring, a massive emerald surrounded by pearls. "Tomorrow," Nero intoned, slipping the ring onto Sporus's finger where it dangled loosely, "you will be reborn. You will become who you were always meant to be, and I will love you as I loved her." A momentary flicker of humanity glimmered in Sporus as he whispered, "Will it hurt?" That brief flicker vanished in the face of Nero's manic certainty. "Birth always hurts," he responded. "But what emerges is beautiful." The transformation and its aftermath. The surgery occurred in a specially prepared medical chamber, a gruesome and agonizing process that reportedly lasted hours, with screams echoing through the palace's thick walls. Outside, Nero paced nervously, a blend of anticipation and dark excitement, occasionally shouting assurances to ease the pain from within. Following the procedure, recovery was a long, arduous journey. Infection threatened at every turn. Sporus needed to relearn even the simplest movements as he healed. Throughout this time, Nero remained present, adjusting dosages of pain medications and even changing bandages, his diligence more reflective of a craftsman than a caregiver. As Sporus recovered, the boundaries between who he had been and who he was being forced to become blurred. An army of tutors descended to ensure Sporus mastered every aspect of femininity, timid walks, graceful body movements, and specific styles of conversing. His voice training was particularly intensive, and he was taught to speak in higher, softer tones, disciplining himself to sound more feminine. Moreover, Nero had commissioned exquisite replicas of Poppaea's dresses, while the imperial seamstresses worked tirelessly, recreating every detail. Jewels were reset to fit Sporus, and fragrances were recreated, mixing rare oils and resins until they matched Poppaea's signature scent. Sporus had to learn the delicate intricacies of an imperial woman's daily rituals, the elaborate beauty routines, the art of reclining at dinner parties and mastering conversations filled with wit but never too clever. Yet perhaps most unnerving was Nero's desire for Sporus not merely to resemble Poppaea. The emperor wanted Sporus to embody Poppaea entirely. The boy was required to delve into Poppaea's history, her childhood in Pompeii, and her rise through Roman society. Every detail about her life was meticulously scrutinized. Nero's nostalgia for shared experiences grew, compelling Sporus to respond as if he too had memories of Poppaea's life. The first public appearance came about 6 months after the surgery, a small dinner party for Nero's closest advisors and their wives. The reactions spurred by Sporus's entrance were electric. Clad in Poppaea's distinctive purple gown and adorned with her jewelry, Sporus embodied a vision that caused conversations to freeze mid-sentence and wine cups to hover, unfulfilled, mid-air. The resemblance was uncanny. Soft lighting and expertly applied cosmetics rendered Sporus a haunting likeness of the dead empress. The tilt of his head, the way he smiled, even the echo of her melodious laughter appeared artfully replicated. Nero watched with a pride befitting an artist presenting his magnum opus. Possessively, he kept one hand on Sporus throughout the evening, introducing him as "my beloved Sabina," using Poppaea's family name. The other guests, savants of survival in the aristocratic court, played along, complimenting Sporus' beauty and including him in conversation as though the last several months had been a peculiar dream, and Poppaea had never actually died. The crumbling illusion. However, the charade could not be maintained indefinitely. Roman historian Tacitus later noted the observations of those who participated in this grotesque masquerade. They saw Sporus's hands, despite the treatments, still slightly too large for a woman. They noted the masculine broadness of his shoulders beneath the flowing garments. They witnessed, in moments of forgetfulness, the natural voice of Sporus break through the carefully crafted tones. Yet more poignant were the incidents when Sporus's own identity and personality would emerge, revealing bursts of his original self, areas where the man trapped inside this new persona would shine through. Though the performers around him rooted for the illusion, the truth of Sporus's torment began to seep through some cracks. Over time, as the pretense began to wear, the shock and horror of Sporus's unsettling transformation became more apparent. Those who had once praised him now spoke in hushed tones, their glances filled with pity and confusion. The carefully constructed image started unraveling, not only in the eyes of the public but also within Sporus himself. The breaking point arrived. In a moment of loneliness, Sporus retreated to a private corner in the palace, where he grasped the ruins of his identity. The echoes of who he once was clashed violently with the constructed persona Nero had imposed on him. A whirlwind of emotions engulfed him, confusion, rage, and an overwhelming sense of loss flooded his consciousness. One evening, amid a gathering with Nero and his closest advisors, Sporus realized that he had become an object within a cruel game, a trophy of twisted love. Overcome, he fled from the gathering, spiraling into a pit of despair. It was in that dark solitude that he made his choice. Unable to see a future that held his true self, he retreated to the wine cellar of an abandoned villa. Clutching the vial of poison, he sought escape from a life of torment. The final act, the imperial guards found him just before he could end his suffering. They apprehended Sporus, the trembling boy who had once been a person in his own right, now reduced to a pawn in a power-hungry emperor's delusions. The guards would drag him back into the light, away from the possibility of death and into the grasp of a life so tortured that it drove him to the very edge of oblivion. What began as the tragic story of a young boy yearning for freedom transformed into the cautionary lament of a powerful empire consumed by its own grotesque desires, a reminder that love can turn sinister and the quest for immortality through another's identity can lead to the death of one's soul. So Sporus remained trapped in the Colosseum of Nero's obsessive love, a haunting specter of a life erased and replaced, a living embodiment of loss, identity theft, and a cautionary tale echoing through the annals of history. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to support our work. Never miss an upload. Like this vid, drop a comment, and share it with others to help us grow this historical community.